Good day, everyone. Welcome to this video discussion on computer-mediated communication. In this video discussion, allow me to give you some introductory concepts for you to better understand what computer-mediated communication is, its definition, purpose, and the different perspectives that could be revisited for us to deeply understand what CMC is in the communication discipline. Before anything else, allow me to give you a background first, an introduction to computer-mediated communication. Many may have not expected the spread and seeming progression in modern computing or its exponential rise and integration to human life. And I think if we are to look back to those years when communication channels or media are not yet that progressive or advanced, we would notice how communication was definitely facilitated or channeled from one person to another or from one group to another. The not so progressive attempts of communication have definitely affected also the channeling of messages from one party to another, and as well as the interpretation of these messages depending on the communicative sphere or ecology or situation. We increasingly talk of the Internet of Things, and opportunities to interact with others online are unlimited, both in devices to use and in modes of interaction. And nowadays, it is undeniably true that communication has become more convenient, not because of the relationships that we have established, but because of the various equipment, technologies, or devices that we can use for us to deliver our various messages. And this only speaks a lot of how the advancement of technology has indeed impacted positively the human life's communication, the daily transactions or dealings with other people or with society in general, and how meanings are being channeled from the encoder to the decoder or the person sending the message to the receiver. But the question now is, how do these mediated interactions affect the way we communicate, our interactions with others, and how we perceive others and ourselves? Considering that technology or the channel that we use when communicating can definitely impact the meaning being relayed, it's also very important for us to look into the effects of these different technologies or mediated interactions and the different relationships that we have formulated in society, and as well as the different perceptions that we have, not only of ourselves, but also of others. And so it is hoped that through this course, computer-mediated communication, we can better understand how purposeful technology is in society and how technology facilitates effective communication, effective mediated communication to be specific. Now, computer-mediated communication or CMC may generally be considered as the process of the exchange of meaning among two or more humans through digital channels. That's according to Carr in 2020. And when we talk about digital channels, of course, there is variety. There are different digital channels that we can consider as part or as a composition of this context when we talk about computer-mediated communication. CMC within the communication discipline is relatively new. If we are to compare it with the study of speech and human communication, well, computer-mediated communication is indeed relatively new. It's something that has not been well explored yet by scholars or by linguistic researchers, primarily because it is also dependent on the progress of technology in society, the use of the internet, the developments of World Wide Web, and the information traffic available online. So, as mentioned, it is relatively new compared to the century of formalized scholarship into speech and human communication. And to add on a few extra millennia, if we go back to Aristotle and other great orators. Now, to effectively consider how humans are adapting to virtual interactions, we therefore need to consider computer-mediated communication from a theoretical approach, understanding how elements and properties of mediation affect communicative processes. That is why, for us to better understand how mediated communication works from the perspective of digitalization or technologies, it is also good to give consideration, utmost consideration, to the different communication models and theories, and as well as to also consider the different individuals or technologies involved in this computer-mediated communication. So, what is computer? Definition, context, and specifics. Some of us might have some difficulties defining what a computer is, considering that there could be some disparity with how people perceive computer from before and now. But its definition is indeed evolving. It means that from time to time, when we talk about computer, its meaning changes. Its context and as well as its specifics do change as well. So let us have a deep understanding of what CMC or computer-mediated communication is beyond what is considered to be desktop, okay, the typical computer that we have in mind. Now, in the late 1980s or early 1990s, the definition of computer was easy to determine. Well, if you have a desktop computer there with a keyboard, with a CPU, with the screen or the monitor, with a mouse, automatically that's a perception of computer. However, CMC is the study of what happened when an individual communicated via a terminal or computer at a fixed location or desktop will tell us that it goes beyond computer being a desktop object. It goes beyond the typical computer that was used before by scholars or experts. This also means to say that computer-mediated communication may be understood from a different lens or different perspective. Hence, we need to consider also the modern versions of these units of computer units. Now, CMC or computer-mediated communication or discourses are messages produced different from face-to-face exchanges. So definitely, we can distinguish a computer-mediated communication from other forms of communication depending on the channel used. So if it is face-to-face interaction or a face-to-face exchange of message or meanings, then definitely it's not computer-mediated communication. But when there is computer or digital tools already used to communicate or to relay message, to another person or to a group, then that will surely be considered a form of computer-mediated communication. This is also the reason why that as years passed, the definition became problematic because there has always been evolution of technology. And with technological evolution, the definition for computer-mediated communication may also vary or change. What might be CMC 10 years ago might no longer be considered a CMC now. So it is very important for us to consider first the definition of what a computer is for us to really understand when to consider a specific body of text a form of a computer-mediated discourse or a type of communication given the context or situation, an example of computer-mediated communication. So shown here on the screen is the evolution of computers. So if you could see, there is really a big change which definitely happened from the 1960s up to the present. And nowadays, when we talk about computers, it's no longer desktop because our cellular phones or mobile phones can be considered as well a form of computer. Hence, our definition of computer should not only be limited to those that are desktop, okay? Those that are mobile may also be considered as a computer. Hence, communication existing in these modern platforms such as our mobile phones, our cell phones, our smart watches, and other forms of technology where communication is possible can be considered as a form of computer-mediated communication too. So we need to widen our understanding here of what computer is for us also to have a wider perspective of what computer-mediated communication is and when to consider a form of communication computer-mediated. So if we look here on the screen, definitely there are different forms of computer-mediated communication. For example, when you use the messenger to contact your friend or your family, or when you attend a Zoom meeting or a Zoom online class or synchronous class for students, when you send emails through Google or Gmail or Google Mail, when you post pictures through Instagram, or when you take active participation in online games, or when you engage in online gaming. Now, the question is, are these considered computer-mediated communication? Or some of these are face-to-face exchange. For example, when you attend a Zoom class, a synchronous class, you are also face-to-face, right? Because you are facing your teacher or you are facing your other classmates. But the question is, since there has been involvement of technology in all these synchronous classes via Zoom or Google Meet or various platforms, can we also consider these interactions a form of computer-mediated communication? And can we also consider the discourses produced in these situations or in these communicative situations a form of computer-mediated communication as well? Or are these plain examples of face-to-face exchanges only? So we need to consider here the involvement of technology or digital devices in relaying, okay, or in channeling messages. So that's why we cannot really tell at all times that whenever it's digitalized communication is automatically computer mediated, because there might be other forms of mediated communication existing even through the use of technology or gadgets. So understanding computer-mediated communication is more than just knowing if a message is produced by technology or not. So it goes beyond than that, okay? Which means to say that it does not simply mean that when a form of communication happens or takes place through or via online platforms or digital platforms, automatically communication produced in these platforms is computer-mediated. So we have to have a deeper understanding of what computer-mediated communication is. So I think it's easier for us to identify how and when a communication becomes computer-mediated when we also know how to position computer-mediated communication within the communicative discipline. So CMC can be considered as a sub-discipline situated within a broader field of communication. So if you have communication there as the main umbrella, under this one, computer-mediated communication could be considered as a sub-discipline only, because if we are to consider also other forms of communication such as organizational communication, interpersonal, intrapersonal communication, group and public communication, all of these, even mass communication and using the tri-media, all these are sub-disciplines of communication. And the communication discipline in itself is already a broad discipline. So we need to understand that computer-mediated communication is under the umbrella of the communication discipline, and it could be multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary. Now, it readily spans other sub-disciplines and fosters new ways to ask new questions about the fundamental nature of human interaction, because with the advent of technology, the nature of human interaction also changed, right? So we need to take into consideration the types of human interaction, the nature of human interaction, and as well as the situation, okay, or the sphere, the ecology of human interaction, for us to better understand how technology primarily functions in these different communicative events. Now, in addition to augmenting what is going on in other parts of the field, computer-mediated communication is increasingly distinguishing itself as its own area and with its own sets of concerns. Although we have different sub-disciplines under the communication discipline per se, we can consider computer-mediated communication as an independent sub-discipline because it has its own concerns, it has its own issues, it even has its own areas, okay, different aspects that you can look into. So we have to also understand how CMC becomes a convergence and divergence. So in the next slides, I will be discussing comprehensively CMC as convergence and CMC as divergence. Now, the easiest way for us to understand what makes CMC a convergence is through these pictures shown on the screen. We cannot deny the fact that technology has played a significant role in today's education. With the shift in terms of education from being physical to being online or virtual, technology's role cannot be underestimated. It's omnipresent. Everywhere you go in the educational sphere, technology is and should always be present. And because of this, the integration of computer-mediated communication into communication for academic purposes has become very apparent. If you notice, the communication produced during online classes, such as via Zoom or Google Meet, are also very integral so that there would be understanding despite the virtual setup that is happening in the educational sphere. Now, this may show how group communication happens, but through virtual or technological platforms. And not only group communication exists, but also information seeking, because communication is used for educational purposes. And with this, we can say that CMC converges group communication and communication for educational purposes. So when you say converge, it means that it tries or it attempts to connect two disciplines so that there could be one discipline together. For example, in this case, this is communication for educational purposes. And communication for educational purposes happens or exists because of computer-mediated communication, which converges group communication and information seeking together. Okay? I hope this one is very clear. Now, meeting people nowadays, okay, in society has also become advanced, all thanks to technology. If we all know, or if not all, some of us would know that there have been several dating platforms already, or online platforms that will allow you to search for romantic partners. Okay? Now, dating has been done through online platforms, various platforms such as Tinder. Now, in this context, computer-mediated communication converges interpersonal communication and relation formation and romantic relationships. In this case, technology is very instrumental in ensuring that interpersonal communication happens not only online but also offline the moment that two individuals meet together for romantic purposes. And the moment they meet, of course, there is relational formation, at the same time romantic relationship that will possibly spring. In this case, technology is also serving as a tool to ensure that there is this convergence between two disciplines, the discipline of interpersonal communication and the discipline of relation formation and romantic relationships. And CMC, or computer-mediated communication, allows these two individuals who are engaged in a romantic search or in a romantic relationship to better explore themselves, to better understand themselves, not only in terms of personal profile, but also in terms of cultural background or maybe religious profile. So it's multidisciplinary in that case, and it also touches other aspects of interpersonal communication and human nature. Now, computer-mediated communication helps converge previously separate subdisciplines. Okay, as mentioned a while ago, we have integration of CMC into communication for academic purposes. So we have group comm and information seeking converge as one. And then we have interpersonal comm and relation formation and romantic relationships converge as one. So CMC definitely helps converge previously separate subdisciplines, allowing multiple contexts and relationships to collapse online and giving an opportunity to more holistically study and understand the fundamental processes of human communication. Now, it is through looking into these different aspects of human communication that we better understand not only the theoretical underpinnings, but also the fundamental processes involved here. So what makes people really interpersonal individuals? What makes people or humans to be communicative individuals? So I think computer-mediated communication is there to bridge differences in terms of these subdisciplines and creates opportunities to better understand these different disciplines existing or involved in human communication, in the processes of human communication. Now, if computer-mediated communication converges different disciplines, it has also become a divergence. And when we say divergence, it means to say that CMC has set itself apart from other parts of the communication discipline by exploring how humans adapt to a new means of communication and take advantage of new channels and cues, which means to say that it is only computer-mediated communication among other forms of communication, interpersonal, organizational, mass media, that is totally separate, all because of how humans interact or how humans communicate due to the new means of communication, which also gave birth to new channels and cues. For example, if before we need to communicate with a person to express ourselves, we really need to be physically present in front of that person or we need to personally interact with that person for us to communicate effectively and to show our facial expressions, our emotions. Now, we can simply use our emoticons or emojis on different social media platforms or other chatting systems for us to express our emotions, right? In this case, new cues, nonverbal, to be specific, okay, or multimodal at times, have become very useful in order for us to express ourselves better. Now, on the other hand, communication is also unique as a subfield due to some of the communicative possibilities that, while possible offline, are readily available and usable online. So, we can definitely say that how humans communicate nowadays because of technology and how humans communicate using computer-mediated platforms are or have totally adjusted depending on the available features, the available systems or mechanisms for communication online. Before, when we want to greet a person, for example, before when we want to greet a person, happy birthday, we would really send that person a cake or send him or her a personal message. But now, for example, when we greet through social networking sites such as Facebook, we can just send GIFs or GIFs and other animations, videos, photos, and other multimodal materials for us to express our greetings for that person. And these are all readily available features online that you can use, which means to say that CMC has become more unique because other platforms or other forms of communication, such as organizational interpersonal, intrapersonal communication, most especially those in the context of face-to-face transactions and interactions, do not have these features that are readily available for people involved in the communicative process. So it makes itself divergent. It is an independently standing entity, totally different from the rest of communication types or communication processes. So what then is CMC? Now, we have considered the different forms of computers. We have also considered the different perspectives in understanding computer-mediated communication. I think it's time for us to finally define what computer-mediated communication is. Now, computer-mediated communication, or CMC, is considered to be the transmission of meaning between two or more humans via digital technologies. So that's one factor that you need to consider: the presence or existence or involvement of technology in the communication process done by two or more humans. Okay? And emphasizing the effects of mediation on human communication processes over specific technological processes. So, how does meaning making happen? How does decoding happen? Okay? How does a person interpret or decode a message after a computer-mediated communication? And how does the channel or the platform affect the, the quality or the content or the meaning of the text, okay, or of the message being relayed to channel? So this is computer-mediated communication. Computer-mediated communication is more than just saying or telling that when communication exists in an online platform or digital platform, it's automatically computer-mediated communication. Of course, you need to understand first that there must be two or more humans involved, and the channel primarily must be digital, okay, or involving digital technologies. And computer-mediated communication also underscores on the effects of mediation itself on human communication processes, more than the existing technological processes during the communication itself. Now, in a nutshell, the channels available for computer-mediated communication continue to expand rapidly. And this is a fact. If you observe society, people have developed or devised advanced or more progressive ways to communicate with others. People have also been discovering a lot of digital tools that they can use to communicate or to relay their message to another person or to a group of individuals. Therefore, we can say really that the channels available for this computer-mediated communication have evolved through times, and have actually expanded. And so we have many options We have many choices, and we do have alternatives for communication. There are also various ways of communication, not only interpersonal, intrapersonal, organization, group communication, public communication, and mass media communication or mass communication. We also have other forms. For example, computer-mediated communication itself, or it could be a hybrid of different types or ways of communication, such as this concept called mass personal communication, which is a combination of mass and interpersonal communication. And with all of these issues, with all of these concepts that I just tackled, I can say that the topic of computer-mediated communication is an obvious and increasingly important subject to discuss. That is why more scholars have to be more interested or passionate about the study of computer-mediated communication because it's actually dynamic and it has become more flexible with the progression of different technologies, emerging technologies around us. And from year to year, humanity experiences a lot of changes in terms of technological advancements. And so we can conclude that technology definitely affects the way we communicate in society. And whether we accept it or not, it's a fact. The technology has a big impact on human communication or human transactions. So this is where I will be ending my discussion. I'm hoping that you have fully understood what computer-mediated communication is. Although there are still a lot of concepts to discover, but I'm hoping that through this course, you will better understand the very importance of computer-mediated communication, and also you will give more value or appreciate more the existence of this computer-mediated communication in society for us to also better understand human communication in general or human nature to be specific. Thank you very much for watching this video discussion. And so if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to comment or to post on the open forum. Thank you very much.